sorry if I seem impatient. I'm not a fan of pleasantries. See, I get bored with the weather.
All right. So psyched to be here. And this has been really, really fun. The podcast has been going well, and thank you for coming out. This is the first time we've tried to do it live, so hopefully everything goes great. We're going to do some questions at the end. So if you want to ask a question, feel free. We'll set up a little microphone somewhere, and you can ask some questions. Okay. So my guest today, I'm going to try so hard to not just talk about friend things, because he's literally like maybe one of my best friends in the whole world, and I want to make sure that everybody gets. He has a lot to share and offer, and I want everybody to make sure they get that from him, and not just hear about how the two of us like helped each other with our proposals to our wives, and like we're roommates for a very long time, and like sincerely we go way, way, way back. So if you would please give a warm welcome to my friend who is a director, an actor, a philanthropist, a feminist, just like one of the best people in the world, one of my dear friends, Justin Baldoni. Let him in. Give it up now. Awesome. Sweet. Hey, sure, just come up whenever you want. Dude. Hug it out, baby.
Hi.
First of all,
Wow, this is really cool.
we just got the sign. How cool is the sign? I'm like really excited about this sign. Hey
Hello.
man, how are you?
Hey, dude.
I feel like we're really good friends, but I haven't had a good long chat with you. And
We're
like,
ships passing.
ships
in the
passing
night.
in the night. So this is really nice to sit down with you. There's so many things I want anybody who listens to this podcast to take from you, and I want to start with my last days, because that when we were roommates, that was like the thing that really I think shifted some stuff for you.
Yeah. Hold on. I want to take it back 1 second.
Okay.
How cool is it that we were roommates and like homies and struggled like all at the exact same time?
Yes.
And I'm just, there's like a moment, even the fact that there's more than 3 people here
I know.
that like wanted to come. There was a little bit of a line. I
Yeah.
feel like you text, I don't know how you text 10,000 people, but somehow you do.
Anyways,
But how crazy is it that like we could even, like people even care what
it's
we have to
unbelievable. You know,
say?
one of the things that Justin did for me, he was one of the first guys I met when I moved to Hollywood, and he was on a show, and he was like, he looks like a movie star, or he always did. So I get down, and I have this friend now, and we were running, and he was like trying to teach me how to work out, but whatever. And we're on treadmills, and he looked me in the eye. I'll remember this. You probably don't even remember saying this. And he looked at me. I had nothing going on. Like I was street performing.
I remember we were right here at 24 Hour
Yeah,
Friends.
I was street performing. I was like slinging CDs on the street, trying my hardest, and I there wasn't a lot of prospect in my future at the moment. And this cool guy from Hollywood looked me in the eye, and he goes like, "If I could buy stock in you, I would."
Dude, I feel to this day.
Dope. I was like, "Oh my God, I need that so bad right now." Thank you so
There
much.
are very few people
Yeah.
that I've ever believed in as much as I believed in Andy Grammer. And even
Anyways.
and I think that's the most important thing about like really good friends is that even when you can't see yourself, they see you.
They see you.
And they remind you of your purpose.
So I
right?
saw. Okay, so you had been on Everwood, and you had this kind of like rise, and then you had this moment.
And then I had this immediate drop.
This like, only when you're this close can you be like, yeah, you had a drought, and I was with you through it, and I remember you like kind of like creating this idea of My Last Days out of it, and it was something that you'd been banging on the acting door for a while, and it wasn't opening the way you wanted it to, and you just decided to go the directing route. What do you remember how that came to you, or what the the origin story of My Last Days is?
so-
First of all, My Last Days, tell us what it
Yeah,
is.
so My Last Days is a documentary series where I travel the country and I tell stories of incredible people who have a terminal illness but are just living beautiful lives. And it's actually, so Andy and I are both Baha'is.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways we became friends. And it's rooted in a Baha'i quote where Baha'u'llah says, "I've made death a messenger of joy for thee. Wherefore dost thou grieve?" This idea that like, how could death be joyful? And the one thing that I've known about it is I've always been someone that's been strangely drawn to people before they pass. So like, I think we spend our lives trying to forget that one day none of us are going to be here, like physically here anymore. So it's like we distract ourselves with the world and we forget that like one day we're going to die. Like we were born and then we have somewhere that we're going. And we don't always think about what happens afterwards. This idea of like, how can death be joyful has always kind of just been like, how does that work? No matter how deep your faith is, like, how does that work?
Yeah.
And I know you obviously have had some pretty intense experiences with it.
Yeah.
And as have I. And so I wanted to create something that helped us remember, like, that while we're here, we should really live. And what better way than to, like, literally remind ourselves that one day we're not going to be here. But what's interesting about that show, tying it back into our friendship, was that was like the lowest of the low for me. Like I had everything stripped away at that point. And I'll never forget, and this is an Andy Grammer story, that I was in, we lived together at the time. And his room was like across the hall, and he was just always like playing music, and his life was good and happy, and he was touring and everything. He was just like about to blow up, and you could feel, it's like a volcano before it erupts. You could feel that his career was just gonna go through the roof. And I was now having the opposite experience of just sinking deeper and deeper and deeper and trying to figure out how am I going to like get through, how am I going to pay rent?
You had a car thing. Do you remember the car thing?
He
would buy a cheap car and then like flip it on Craigslist and then flip it again and flip it again. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not your purpose, but you're really good at that. You're like surprisingly good at that.
Until I got sued and I never did it
again.
Okay. But Andy came over to me and he gave me a card. And in that card was a check for $500. And he said, I believe in you and I love you. And it's a gift for me to be able to give this to you. And that was how I paid rent that month. And it was right around it was that month or the month after that I was sitting in the room and it just came through me. And it was literally my last days. A show about living told by the dying. And for me, like that was what I needed to like remind myself, like, hold on a second, there's so much more to life. And so I started the show. My house went into foreclosure, remember that? It was crazy. And my entire life changed because I realized that my gifts could be used in a way that could really help people and help mankind. So
he had me on the show. I don't know if you've seen the show. He called me and he's like, what was her name? Ellie? Yeah, he's like, I need you to write a song for this lady who's about to pass away. I'm like, oh shit. So I did, and
she loved him, and her son loved him. They would watch you on Dancing with the Stars every night. Yeah. And so and every episode was designed in a way where we gave one person a beautiful experience that money could never buy them. And you were the experience of that episode.
And it was just an unbelievable thing. What have you learned now, having done so many episodes? Are there some major takeaways about living that you've learned from these people that are passing away? Like most of them, not most of them, but a lot of them have passed away.
Yeah.
Taxing on your heart to like become so close to someone and then they pass away.
Well, there's two sides of it. One is I desperately need therapy.
Okay.
Because it's true. Like it's in some ways it's like being it's this weird thing where you knowingly fall in love with someone who's going to die. But if you think about it, it's not different than any of us. They just know when.
Yeah.
So it's like we separate ourselves from people with terminal illnesses as if we don't have one. Like we're born terminal.
Yeah.
We just convince ourselves that we're not and that tomorrow is going to come. And that's the one thing I've learned is that every single one of them, like it's like don't sweat the small stuff. It's like make your life a beautiful piece of art. You have the chance. You don't have to find out you're dying to start living. All of these things that, the poets and the religious teachers from like millennia have been teaching us are manifest in these people. But it shouldn't take us having to like get sick to start living the lives that, we want to live and that we can be proud of. And that's also what they say. It's like, you don't have to be like me. You don't have to find out you're dying to start living. And that's kind of like, that's the one thing that I've learned. And the other thing that I've learned is, when you surround yourself with that many people and you're texting with them and they become like family, like it never gets easier. No matter how much I meditate on it or pray about it or think about it, the pain never gets easier when you lose somebody. And I think that's one of these strange gifts, about life is it's supposed to hurt. The difference is like, can it be a beautiful thing at the same time?
Yeah. Ooh. And has that, you're about to release, it's coming out, when is the 5 Feet Apart movie coming?
5 Feet Apart comes out March 22nd, 2019.
So did that spur out, I mean, it's like so, it is a love story of people that can't be together.
Yeah.
Justin has a feature film coming out. It's the first time he's directing a feature film. Give it up for him. Holy shit, it's awesome. Starring, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's this kid that nobody's ever heard of. I hope he makes it one day. Cole Sprouse is in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just this beautiful story about 2 kids with cystic fibrosis that can't touch because of their illness. And it's this exploration of love. Like, what if you couldn't touch the person that you love the most? Because I think we need to be reminded of how freaking lucky we are to be able to just be this close to each other, to hug our spouses or our parents or whatever. And it's a real thing. It's like a real illness. It's not like a...
And there's no one better to direct this movie after you've just done, now you're on your 4th season of My Last Days?
Yeah.
Like the emotional intensity to bring that in to go make this movie
so
about
intense.
yeah.
I need to do happier comedy stuff. Some of my favorite times were going backstage and on tour with Andy, because everything is just so happy and all these really awesome musicians playing happy music all the time. And I'm like, all right.
Where does this come? Where does this thirst for being around such rich emotional stuff?
I don't know. I feel like I'm just a truth seeker, man. And I just think that, in the Baha'i faith, we talk a lot about the veil that is this world, right? How none of this is real, right? And if you're not spiritual, then the easiest way to look at it is if you think about it like the Matrix, right? None of it's real. It's just all designed to distract us. Mm-hmm. And I just have always had this thirst for wanting to know truth and reality and well, what do we really think? I'm not good at small talk. That's why I love the good parts. It's when that song came out, I was like, oh my God, right? It's on my first date with my wife, who's here. We literally talked about the afterlife and death for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And that was a breakfast. And then on our actual first, this is really screwed up. But on our actual first date, we went to a cemetery because there was a celebration of Thornton Chase, who was the first American Baha'i, and there was 200 happy people, but I literally took her to a cemetery. She's like, where are you taking me? Why are we doing this? But what happened from that is you really get to know a person.
Yeah.
I don't care, and you sing about this all the time, so I'm preaching to the converted, but I don't, it's great what shows you or what you're into, but I really want to know who you are. And I think for me, we have so much time on this planet. What's really going on? I want to see, I want to see who the wizard really is. And I don't know. I think so. I think that's a part of it.
I mean, we usually wait to the end to get to this specific question, but it's right on it's right here. So what do you think happens when you die? Because even just to say oh, you keep going, what does that actually mean though? And having been so close to all these people, so where are they?
So I'll use an analogy that also comes from our faith. Mm-hmm. And it's this idea that birth and death are the same. And as parents now, I think it's easier to think about. So when we're born, right, we're in the womb of our moms, and we have everything that we could possibly need, right? We have safety, we have security, we have comfort, we're getting fed. We are in our own universe, our own matrix. And the entire time we are coexisting in 2 places at once. We're both in our own universe, right? Where we're super happy and content. We're developing things. We're developing our eyes and our ears. All these things we don't need where we are. And then at the same exact time, literally an inch away, we are here at Hotel Cafe, right? And can you imagine trying to explain to the baby in the womb that there's 2 people that are talking using vocal cords that have not been developed yet, and then there's a neon sign here, and just outside this room there's clouds and a sky and a solar system and a universe and a sun, and there's a Hollywood sign. There's no, you could never ever explain that to this embryo that's growing in this womb, yet they're in the same place. They're one and the same. And what we're told as you go through this process of, you're in the womb, spend 9 months in the womb, 10 months really, and you're developing these things, and then one day, when you don't know when, you die of the womb. You die through a very uncomfortable process. You are thrust out of that entire world that you know. You go through a tunnel. On the other end of the tunnel is light. And you're met by people who've been waiting for you the entire time, who love you so much. So much in a way that you could never comprehend, right? You're met, it's warmth, it's light, it's the exact thing. And then here you are, you're with your parents, you're with these people, and suddenly you need all of these things you were developing in the womb the entire time. You had no use for your eyes when you were in the womb, but suddenly your eyes allow you to process light. You had no use for your taste buds because you were being fed through an umbilical cord. You need all these things. The Baha'i belief, and what I believe happens to us after we die, is we go through this process on this earth, 90 years, 80 years if we're lucky. For some it's shorter, and we're developing things as well. We're developing our spiritual arms and legs and eyes and ears, and those things come in the form of patience and forbearance and kindness and trust and honesty, all these virtues, right? All these things that we don't realize we need, but we need when we get tested, are things that I believe, that we believe, those are our arms and our ears and our eyes of wherever we're going next. And then one day, we're thrust out of this world in a probably uncomfortable process, right? And hopefully, we're also then met with love from people and souls that have been waiting for us the whole time, because we've only been an inch away. And we're just right there next to this entire universe. And Baha'u'llah explains it to us in the faith like this. And it gives me a lot of comfort to know, because I have experienced so many little things where I'm like, there's no possible way there's no way that could have been a coincidence. Somebody just did that. And it's like somebody from the other side, like if I'm the baby, was like singing to me and was like talking to me. And I'm like, and I could hear something. And this magical thing and I'm like, I know there's somebody that loves me over there that's like trying to help me and assist me. And I know you've experienced those things too.
Yeah.
And it's comfort. And again, nobody can be totally sure, but
Yeah.
that's what I believe.
Isn't it so funny? It's like, it can be that or you're just dead.
Right? The big sleep.
Right? Like both of those are very, very fair options. But
It's literally that. It's the big sleep.
subscribe to everything you just said. And I love to live that way. And I genuinely believe it.
Yeah.
But we're put here with like, you don't know. Good luck.
Or we could have our own planets. We could become aliens.
Hey, who knows?
you go,
all things are on the table.
This one makes the most sense to me.
To me, it makes the most sense too. And I think that, I've been talking about this analogy a lot lately, that it's like we're here to play the game Monopoly, but the points have nothing to do with how much you get.
Yeah.
All the points are like how you're treating everybody while you're playing. And if you actually live your life that way, that's why the afterlife is such a fascinating thing to me, because if you do believe in it, then you can like really think that maybe the point system isn't the correct point system that we're using.
That's the test.
Yeah.
The point system is really the test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting.
We could talk about this all day.
I know, that's why we're here. That's the point.
That's the point. That's literally.
Something that I want to ask you for anybody else is, you're someone that and we're going to talk about more of them, but you do so many things. You're an actor, you're now a director, you've done apps. You're really good at somehow coming up with a crazy idea and then actually executing on it. And I know that there's so many people who are listening right now that are talented and smart, and they have important things to bring to this world. And the process of getting that out of yourself into the world is freaking hard. And I'm sitting next to someone right now who's really amazing at it. What advice would you give someone who's listening who's like, man, I know that I'm artistic, or I know that I have a business I need to start. I know I have something to offer. They're you before my last days. How do they get from there to now?
That's a hard question, because there's a few different parts to it. One is, I feel like there was a lot of times in my life where I thought I was ready when I wasn't.
Ooh, interesting.
And I've been that person that's like, I'm ready to give the world everything. And in reality, I wasn't. I needed to go through some pain and some heartache and some struggle. And it's through that struggle and that heartache and kind of reaching rock bottom, I think, that you really get the tools necessary to be able to give the world all of your gifts. That's like the first part of it.
Okay.
It's like the idea of you have to go down before you can go up. Like when you jump, like you don't just get to like, you have to, you go down. The bow and arrow has to be pulled back before you let it go. And we don't always think about it that way. And I think we're also living in a time where everything is like so on demand and like everyone wants it now and everything's instant, like Instacart, Insta this, Uber, it's like now. And I think we're forgetting, there's no such thing as an overnight success. Like, I was acting for 10 years before I got Jane the Virgin.
Yeah.
Right. And 4 of the years I had stopped acting because it was impossible. Or, I'm having my first feature film come out, but what was the first music video I directed for you?
A very long time ago.
It was a very long
Justin
time
directed
ago.
Back Home, which is probably my favorite music video I've had so far.
Back Home, Miss Me.
Yeah.
So that's one of it. The other is I think we also talk ourselves out of achieving greatness. And there's something, I think we are so afraid to show up as who we are and like give the world like our true gifts, and we talk ourselves out of it because we don't know how it's going to make someone else feel. And we're also afraid of being rejected. And we're afraid of, what if it doesn't work? And I think we spend more time in the what if it doesn't work than what if it does.
Yeah.
And if we just kind of focus.
You live there more, like a ton?
For me, I don't think about it either way until right beforehand. And I go, oh my God, now I'm going to fail. Like, it's like, oh yeah, let's go do a podcast. Wait, why are we doing a live podcast? We can't re-record anything.
Yeah.
Wait, we have to be super intimate in front of a group of people that are watching us.
Yeah.
And then it's like right before, I'm like, oh, there's people in the audience. Oh, this is going to be awful. It's the same thing. It's like before my TED Talk, right? It's a TED Talk. And at first I was like, oh yeah, that sounds great. And then you just do it. And then you realize a week beforehand that it could be, not only could become like an awful thing, but it could literally set back the entire women's movement and ruin everything. And the same thing with a movie. It was like one of the worst experiences of my life because I was just like dealing with so much stuff and this could fail. And if it fails, I'm going to ruin his career and her career and I'll never, but I don't live in that until it happens.
Oh, what
right?
a gift.
So I do everything I can.
God.
I do everything I can to not think about the possibilities that I could crash and burn until right before. And I think that's the only reason why I've been able to do a bunch of things. Because I don't have, honestly, in my opinion, a lot of talent. I have a lot of willpower. And I just believe that anything's possible. But I don't have a lot of talent. I don't think natural talent. At least nothing like you.
Okay.
How was your roommate? Trust me. It's true. So
my version is that I know when I sign on to do it that it's going to be really difficult, and I just go like, I just try to get my level of like the level of creative pain tolerance is just high, and I just kind of live in it all the time at a high level. And you have friends that work out harder than others, and mine is like, people are going to think I'm stupid a decent amount of times. And I'm just going to try to be okay with that. You know what I mean?
I think for both of us, it's we get to the same place, except we just have different processes.
Totally.
Mine's just like kind of blind optimism until the reality sets in. And then it's just straight depression. Like, my wife can tell you, like every time I do a speech or every time, I just am constantly putting myself on the razor's edge of failure.
Yeah, you are.
And
you live there.
So terrifying. And everyone's like, Justin, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. Anxiety, like straight up depression sometimes. Like, this is awful. Why am I doing this? I would be so much happier if I just owned a restaurant.
But in the moment, but I've seen you, you probably will end up doing that. In the moment, I've seen you do have, you kind of like it.
It's like...
I've seen you on a video shoot. Someone needs a jacket. It's like, there's no jackets here. And Justin would be like, hold up. And just like run up to a door and like knock on the door. And somebody shows up, and they're like, who's this beautiful man? He's like, I need your jacket. They just like take his jacket. That's like normal for you. You live on the edge, and it pulls out like amazing things.
It's like my version. I guess it's my version of like being an extreme sport junkie. But it's...
That's what I'm getting at.
I think, yes, there's something there for sure where I thrive in this kind of pressure that I put on myself to create things. And I like to think of it like magic. Like, I love to create magic. And the problem is that I believe what allows me to create magic is my connection with spirituality and God and, you know, all of these things. And my fear, because I don't believe it's really me, is that what if it doesn't show up one day, right? So it's like, okay, I'll pray, and I'm like, okay, I know it's going to be okay. It's going to come through me because I don't actually have the confidence to do any of this stuff as just Justin. I don't believe for a second that just I really has anything to give. I think that through me, things are channeled and the right words are put into my mouth at the right time. The fear there is that I don't, as Justin, have the confidence, but I have confidence in God. And then what if that one day God is too busy doing something else? Which I think about all the time. It's like, why does God care about me? Like, look at our world. But I believe he cares about all of
But
us.
what's so good about it, and one of the reasons I started podcasts is because for me, I used podcasts so much. I need to hear on like a weekly basis people that I respect talk about how much they fail.
Mm-hmm.
I need to hear it. I need to see it before just so that I know when I'm going to start something new, that to be scared shitless and sure that it's going to fail is like, that's step one. You're there. Good job.
Yeah, you're right.
You've begun, my friend. Like, so that's why it's really nice to hear you talk about it that way, that every time you go to do something, you're just scared.
And I'm so happy that you're doing this, because I remember as we were both kind of coming up together and experiencing success at different times, you had said something to me that I always repeat. And I remember you said that the hardest, like, the most difficult part of jumping is just that first like inch off the ground.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if you remember telling me that, but it like sunk in, and it was just like getting something off the ground, like getting that first note of a song or like that first idea of something or whatever it is the hardest part of starting anything, because that's where all the resistance happens. That's where gravity is, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm happy that you're able to like do this and give that to so many people, because I got to see you in your room literally singing for hours straight. Like, I remember, I'll never forget, I had just gotten dumped. And I had no home. I was homeless, and I had no money, and I came over and I slept on Andy's couch for like 2 months.
Yeah.
As I was trying to get my life together.
Anyone who's ever heard the song "Miss Me," it was about this gentleman right here.
And then it was so cool because I got to direct
The video. And he directed the video. Yeah.
that was then my girlfriend got to star in and is now my wife.
Yeah.
So it's like, look at me now. No, but, a little bit. But I'll never forget, like, I'm sitting there, I brought over my computer, I was editing like a music video that I had just directed for like 5 cents, and I was eating like whatever 99-cent like potato skins at the Ralph's on La Brea.
Yep.
And Andy was in his room for hours and hours and hours every single day, just singing, like getting Biggest Man down, writing Biggest Man. And like every time I hear Biggest Man, I get that little bit of anxiety because I go right back to that space of like, but I was blown away. I've never seen anybody work so hard. And it was huge for me because it made me realize, like, wow, I haven't put in my 10,000 hours. Like, have I ever worked as hard as Andy is working on this song? And I remember, and then I could hear like the beginning of the song and then the end, and how it changed, and how your voice got changed and got better. And then over the course of the time, I was like, wow, you've really literally mastered your craft, which is so much more than most of us can say.
Easy,
so it was huge for me.
Yeah.
But I know you're never going to feel like you mastered your craft, but like that was a huge thing for me at that time in my life, to see you just all day long putting in the work, like as you used to call it, the humble hustle.
Humble hustle, baby. Street performer for life. I want to talk about Jane and how fun it is to be a part of. When you do art for a living, it's still really rare you get to be a part of something that good.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that came from, how did that come
There's
about?
no explanation for any of these things that are happening.
Okay.
I can't, like, it just was, I won the lottery.
Yeah.
That's really it. Like, you might as well ask,
You're
like,
fantastic
you might
at
as well
it.
ask like a lottery winner, like, so what did you do I bought a ticket. Like, I'll never forget, I had given up acting to focus on directing these documentaries. I had just gotten married, and I had no manager or agent, and I had asked Emily to introduce me to her manager because they had a directing part of the company.
Okay.
And of course, like being my wife, she's like, of course, baby, anything. So I went and I met with them, And I showed them My Last Days, and I showed them all these things. And then they were like, yeah, we love it. Let's do it. And if you ever want to act, like, you know, we'll send you on an audition or two. And I said, yeah, that would be amazing. I kind of miss it, like once a month. And 2 weeks later, they sent me Jane the Virgin. And what was crazy was Emily had just auditioned for the role of Petra. And I remember reading, we were in bed and I was reading her audition sides with her, and I was like reading the description of who Raphael was, and like they described him, and I was getting jealous. I was like, if you get this, who's this guy gonna be?
Who is this guy?
Who's this guy gonna be? Never thinking in my ever that description could ever be me.
Yeah.
Right? And then
Sure.
flash forward, they couldn't find him. Somehow it just happened, and then of course it got picked up, and then it went to series, and then it got picked up again. It became this little lightning in a bottle show that has done so much, I think, for women and women of color, and and kind of changing our industry to become so much more intentionally inclusive.
And then you actually got to direct an episode, which is like the craziest full circle.
I directed an episode last year, and it was so cool. And what was crazy about it was the episode I directed. So I was supposed to direct the third episode of the season.
Yeah.
But it was right before our son was born. And the son was born, there was the TED Talk, it was just, everything was nuts. And that was about home birth, which was hilarious because we were very much like home birth advocates in some ways.
Yeah.
And that didn't work out. So the episode I directed ended up being, of course, about Ziamara's cancer storyline. And it was just so sweet that I got to like bring everything that I had learned in that world and like transfer it into like this show that I love so much. And it was crazy. It's just
amazing,
crazy, man. God works in crazy ways.
Yeah. It's fun to see, I don't know how to say this without being weird. You're good looking, okay? And sometimes, I don't just say that from like, I think he's good looking. Yes, he's very good looking. But when you're friends with someone who's this good looking.
He's been saying this for so long.
The first time we met, we hang out, he's like, you want to go to the beach? I'm like, no. And so when you're around him and the way that the world treats him
my God.
is different than most guys I know. Let's just lay that out there. And so also what happened, I sat by being a roommate of yours, watching the world cast you and see you as like, you're the hot guy, we get it. And to see you, the way that you've now, what you're known for and who you are is just so beautiful. That you're like known as the guy who is on Jane the Virgin, did My Last Days, gave this incredible TED Talk that I want to get into, does the homeless stuff, that you've been able to, it was like a gift and also like a thing that you've had to work through.
It's the weirdest thing because, first of all, I don't see myself that way. And as Emily, my wife, can attest, it's I even did an episode of Man Enough we'll talk about on like body image and dysmorphia.
Sure.
And, I was bullied as a kid, and I never thought that I was good looking, and I never ever thought that I could be an actor because I associated actors with being like my first meeting in Hollywood. I was 20 years old. I had this manager who took me to a meeting at an agency, and this agency was known for like having all the best looking people in LA.
Yeah.
And I will never forget. I was 20. We left. I was like, I think that was a great meeting, and he called me the next day. He's like, I want to tell you the feedback. Essentially, the agent called him and said, I only represent good-looking people. He told me that.
Yeah, that's messed up.
But he told me. But that was my and I didn't for a second go, wait, but I am. It was like, oh no, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I moved to Hollywood and they started sending me on roles where the description was like hot that I ever thought that could be true.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't how I saw myself. My nose grew before everything else. Like, I have my eyebrows. Like, it was just,
But the beginning roles you got were that, right?
Were what?
Were like hot guy with shirt off.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Like male escort number 1.
Yeah. And then from my position watching you, it's like, cool, that's not who he is though. So that's not going to work.
And what's funny about it is that, and it's not who I am, but I think that's something that I've realized now is that that's not who any of us are.
Totally.
Like, and that's kind of one of the ways I realized that there was an issue, in my opinion, with masculinity, because I started realizing I was being cast as these individuals, and then I started realizing that, oh my God, wait, in my personal life too, I'm also playing these roles. But anyways, yeah. So
that leads me into what I want to talk about. The TED Talk is unbelievable. If you haven't heard his TED Talk, if you're a guy, if you're a girl, both sides need to hear it. It's unbelievable. It's a talk about masculinity, just like in general. And you want to give a little bit of...
It was the absolute most terrifying thing.
It was you nailed it. It was awesome.
It was so scary. I remember I remember texting you, just telling you how terrified I was and saying, I was like, please send your mom.
But it kind of came out of some of those gatherings that we were having, right?
Yeah, I think it came out of a lot of stuff. It came out of, some from the proposal and like the reaction of when I proposed to Emily, and they went super viral, and people couldn't believe that a man, I guess, that looked the way that I did, or that would be willing to make that much of a fool of himself, or dance, or sing, or get rejected. Because I was really making fun of myself throughout the whole thing. Yeah. And then I remember being at the gym. I was when I lived in Hollywood over there on Easton's, and this huge, big, buff guy came up to me afterwards. He's like, "Hey, you proposed to your wife?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You made me cry, dude." Oh, sick. But he did it like this kind of super secret way where he didn't want anyone else to hear. Like, God forbid he cried. And I realized, like, why do we have to, as men, love these things in secret? And why is it so weird for so many women to like see a man? And what I saw was so many women putting me on a pedestal that I did not deserve to be on. And I went, there's a problem here. Why are we looking at this thing that I did, or me, as the like exception to the rule, when in reality, like, I know so many amazing dudes that would do that for their wives, or different things for their wives. And I know so many open men, and I hear so many women constantly say, like, where are all the good men? And I'm like, there's so many good men. Why are you hiding good men? Why are you pretending to not be good men? And I think that was like the beginning of my exploration of figuring out, like, what the hell's wrong? There's something that's not adding up. And I don't know if it's like this idea that nice guys can't win, or we're not supposed to be nice guys, or we're afraid, like we've also been socialized to like not cry and not show our emotions. And I know you and I are we're a little bit of an exception there.
But even when I do cry, I still the whole time, my body, I've now got my head to the place where I'm like, I'm cool, cry.
Yeah.
But my body still goes like, no,
don't do it. You're betraying your species.
My head literally is like, it's fine, body, like chill out, just cry. Yeah. And the body's like, I don't know how.
Well, it's that same thing. Maybe it's like, I don't know if it's like this for you, and like your dad is an example, but I'm now a dad, and I'm holding my son, and I want to like smother him and kiss him and all these things. And now, I'm 34 years old, and I have these moments where my mind is like, go cuddle with your dad. And my body is like, don't move. Or like, I want to just, and sometimes even with me and another man, like we're good friends, like just looking the other man in the eye for more than like 10 seconds or 5 seconds, or while you're talking, it's hard for some reason. And there's no explanation for why, except that we have been socialized to feel uncomfortable being intimate with each other. And intimacy is a whole big topic, but with men, like men are so afraid to be vulnerable with each other. We're so afraid to open up and show our weaknesses because, again, we grow up thinking that we have to be the alphas. We grow up thinking that like we have to grow up and like be the leader of our tribe and the king of the castle, and we have to do all these things. And if we show another man, God forbid, that we're struggling, or that we're addicted to something, or that we're weak in one area, or that we don't have any money and we don't know how to pay rent, then our like entire gender is going to disown us, and we're not going to be able to like. It's like the stakes are that high, which is one of the reasons why male suicide is so much higher. Like it's growing. It's because we don't know how to seek help, and we'd rather figure it out ourselves. And we learn that generationally. We learn that from our dads, who learned it from their dads, who learned it from their dads, and now it's like we're realizing that doesn't work for us anymore. And there's space and there's room for fluidity. So that was all part of it. And that was all part of my whole TED Talk was just me having this kind of like open crisis in front of like millions of people that was like, I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
But I can tell you I've never been man enough, and I probably won't ever be man enough. So why am I even trying to be man enough? Like, what does man enough even mean?
Yeah.
And some of my favorite qualities about myself are the stereotypically feminine ones. And, I just think it's all weird.
It's awesome. And you really took like I don't know whether, I think we started at your house where we would go and sit with a bunch of guys in your living room. And even just the question, what does it mean to you to be a man? Sitting with like 20 other dudes together is a very profound question. And where did you learn what a man is? Hearing everybody answer it, and before you know it, everybody's like uncovering some crazy shit.
Crazy.
But they're like, oh, well, I learned it from my dad did this thing, so I think this, you know. But it's really, it's like important work to be done. And then you have this whole other, like the Man Enough the show online is awesome too.
That's also important. Just we wanted to model like deep, intimate conversations with men. And I don't know, I really believe if we can fix the masculine issue, if we can fix the issue that men have with each other, I think we can fix every problem that exists in the world. I can't think of an issue that doesn't start with, in some way, like us. And that's a weird thing, I know. But like I can't think of like a massive like world issue. Yeah. Like, you know, and it's probably stupid, you know, I don't know. I just can't imagine a world run by women where like we would conquer each other and just kill everybody for, you know, for like money. Yeah. Like I can't imagine that world. I think that so much of that is rooted in like this masculine idea that we have to win everything and beat everything.
You know, so how do we fix it? So one of the things you've done to me is you will text me and saying you're going through something, which I appreciate. I haven't done it yet. It's bullshit. I go through plenty of things, and I haven't reached out to you.
I don't know why. Look, man. Rumi says it's not for us to seek for love, but to seek the reasons why we build up all the barriers against it, right? It's like this. I don't know why we build up these barriers and we make it so hard for ourselves to like do the simplest, easiest things. And it comes back to we have been trained to like say that we cannot ask for help. That's the only thing that it comes. We've been socialized to be the Lone Ranger, to be the Marlboro Man, to be like the guy that rides off on the horse into the sunset, like in the Western. And we don't know how to do it, and we feel like if we do it, we're betraying our gender or something. It's the weirdest thing.
It's funny to watch. We've done it at my house too, where we had like 30 guys in a circle, doing like talking about this, and certain people that are not open to it yet. You can watch them come in and go like, I feel very uncomfortable. I don't like this. I don't like this. And then like an hour in, they're the sweetest ones that have things to share, want to open up and talk and say. It's almost like a cliche of itself at this point. So it is. But it's just true. It's just there. That there are a lot of guys that have trouble with that first barrier of being like.
But that's the whole thing is that
how do we actually connect with each other?
But I have trouble too. Yeah. And you have trouble. And I don't think there's any man that doesn't have trouble. And that's one of the things that's important for me to say is, I'm the guy that did the TED Talk and I'm the guy that has the Man Enough show, but I am not an exception here. I am struggling with the exact same things as every single one of my male friends. The difference is I'm like making myself uncomfortable so that I can be better. Yeah. Like I'm literally using this fake idea of fame so that I can try to become a better man because it puts the pressure on myself. Like, you know, I have to try. It's so much easier to just like accept that things are the way they are and to just become complacent. So I'm literally just on the edge saying, all right, this sucks. Every time I look in the mirror, I feel like shit. I should probably talk about it because somebody else feels the same way. Yeah. And then you realize that everybody feels the same way. Everybody. Even the guys that are posting the shirtless pictures of themselves every day on Instagram that make me feel inadequate. Yeah. They feel the same way. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the gym all the time doing it. But nobody realizes that. It's like these fake ideals that we just make ourselves believe are okay. In reality, we're all trying to just figure out how to get through. We're all trying to just figure out how to make ourselves feel like we are good enough. And like that's the important thing. So I guess that's what I'm just trying to do.
I love it. Talk to me about. We both have a very unique love for helping the homeless, and your carnival of love is one of the coolest things. It's like one of my favorite things ever. It's coming up soon.
January 26th.
January 26th. Do you have too many volunteers already?
No. I mean, yes, but it's totally okay. Okay. Everybody's welcome.
Everybody's welcome
to sign up.
So let's talk about it first before we tell them that.
So the Carnival of Love is a day of human kindness.
Is it your birthday?
It was started around.
It started around your birthday.
Yeah. The true story is that the Carnival of Love would not exist if it were not for my friendship with Andy Grammer. So the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people over the last 5 years would have not been helped and seen and heard and loved had it not been for you. Because one day you decided on your birthday to make food for the homeless, and you invited all of us over, and then you passed them out. And I thought, that's it. That's what I've been wanting to do forever. That was like 12 years ago. So then
you showed up with the McDonald's. You remember that?
Yeah. And then
we made all these. I mean, I was so poor.
we were so poor.
I was so poor. We made these like really cheap. I went to Ralph's and got like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I'm telling Justin about it, and Justin's like, "Oh my god, totally." So then Justin shows up with like badass McDonald's, like a bunch for everybody. It was amazing.
We bought, it was like
You went
$50
dollar menu crazy.
Yeah, went dollar menu crazy at McDonald's.
That's the first level of wealth. When you're really poor, then you get to go to like a Taco Bell or a McDonald's, and you go to everybody like, get whatever you want. Everybody get whatever you want. Let's do it. Yeah.
So true. But I remember that moment because I was number one for birthdays. I was always like, I felt uncomfortable saying, come celebrate me. And it was like, it clicked for me. Like this, it was like you doing that, it opened up my eyes and I went, that's it. That's me. That's exactly what I need to do, and that's what I want to do from now on. And so every year I started doing it, and I started inviting friends, and it turned into a bigger thing, and 30 people, and then 40 people, and
Quite
then
a big
70
thing now.
people. And then when Jane the Virgin happened, knowing kind of the way that Hollywood works and like this perceived idea of coolness based on whether or not you're on a show or you have followers or a celebrity, I said, well, why don't we try and experiment and see if we can use it to like get people to show up to Skid Row. So we created this carnival. I was like, what if we threw a carnival? Carnivals are generally things that come to pretty like, middle American towns to like give them a day of like forgetting that life is hard.
Yeah.
And, you eat really shitty food and like go on things that make you then throw up the shitty food.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what if we could do it better? So we created this carnival, and the idea was really like this kind of group think effort where it's like, okay, let's get as many people as we can to show up. Bring clothes, bring food, bring hygiene products, bring books, bring anything that you don't need in your life anymore. Bring it, but that's not going to change anything. What's going to change things are the way you interact with the person you give it to. So we thought, let's create a day where it's just, all of us are going to see, we're going to hear, and we're going to love on these people that are so often forgotten. Abdu'l-Baha in the Baha'i Faith, he says, tell the rich of the midnight sighing of the poor. And like, it was such a profound thing. Like, here we are in the hotel cafe, we're all doing okay, but like just a few blocks away, and even outside, there are people that have nothing, that at night, when we're sleeping on our beds, are sighing because they just are struggling, whether it's with addiction, whether they're on the street because of their own choice, or whether it's because they don't have anybody else, or they were born that way and it's perpetual. So we thought if we can just love people, then that could be like the other part of a solution. Politics aside, like you got to fix things through legislation. You need enough housing for the homeless, number one, but they also need to be seen and they need to be loved. So that first year was an experiment. It was awesome. And then it grew and it grew and it grew. And as my D-list celebrity grew, so did the carnival. And now it's become this pretty incredible thing where we had, like last year, we had 180 different service providers from LA. Like we became a hub for all the nonprofits who are competing with each other, that don't talk to each other, to show up in one place and provide services that these amazing people can't get otherwise. So it's like a job fair, medical fair, dental fair.
People are getting IDs.
There's IDs, because that's one of the things. You can't get off the street unless you have an ID, but you can't get an ID unless you have money to get to the ID, or all of these different things. We're trying to just solve some of these problems for them. But more than that, it's a one-on-one experience where you get paired up with somebody that you may probably never meet or just ignore or walk by in like an everyday kind of situation, and you get to talk to that person and hear that that person is human just like you.
Yeah.
And maybe through that experience, friendships can be born, and that's how we can get people off the street.
Yeah.
But
one of the sweetest things is
for
there's
you.
a foot washing station, and there's so sweet to see. Friends of mine, or I got to do it as well. To like sit with someone who's homeless, and you're literally below them while you're washing their feet. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I mean, but it comes from the Bible. It's like Jesus did that.
Yeah.
Like, and again, I keep going back to like our faith and the Baha'i faith. The highest place you could ever get to is the lowest, is what we're told.
Yeah.
And like, there's nothing more beautiful than sitting down and washing somebody's feet who has not been touched in God knows how long, and like talking to them and seeing them cry and just experiencing that with them. And this was the first year that actually Emily and I got to do it, because the last 4 years we hadn't been able to.
Yeah.
So our goal this year is we're trying something totally different.
Okay.
And we're going to look for 100 people, and those 100 people we're going to ask to commit to 1 year of being friends with one person that they meet on the street.
Awesome.
And I'm going to raise a little bit of money, and I'm going to give each of those one people a little Visa card, and they can only spend it on that person that they meet for something that person needs.
I'm in.
And
to help. How can I help?
Because
please?
So we're going to try. We're going to try this experiment because I believe that I want to see what
Is
can
there a place that people that are listening can donate to this thing?
Skid Row carnivaloflove.org.
Skid Row Carnival.
Skid Row carnivaloflove.org.
Okay, cool.
And we're going to see what happens if these 100 people go to the carnival with an open heart and an open mind to make a friend and to just stay in touch with that person for a year. And how many of those people can get off the street? So we don't know what's going to happen, but that's a scalable thing that I believe we can take anywhere. And that's that's how change really happens.
Okay, now I want to chat with you because you're so awesomely open about it in a way that I have been not as open about it, which is the Baha'i faith.
Yeah.
You are amazing at it. My thing, especially being someone who writes music, I just never want anyone to ever think that I'm trying to push something on them. I'm like super freaked out and sensitive about it. Because anytime you hear any music and then you hear like, oh, that's like a faith thing, you know it's a faith thing, your head goes like, oh, I'm either on the team or I'm not on the team.
Yeah.
And so I've watched you be so open, and is there any fear about being open with your faith?
Well, I think I grew up with fear because I was always the only Baha'i. So I was always the minority. Like I grew up in a really born-again Christian town in Oregon. And I remember like coming home crying because the kids were like, you're going to burn in hell. Like, do you realize that you're going to burn in hell? Like, Justin, like, we love you. You're a really good guy, but we don't want you to burn in hell. Yeah. Like, these were real things that were, that you'd go to sleep, like, thinking there was something wrong with you because of the faith that you followed. Yeah. And, it was a beautiful thing for me. To this day, I've never had a drink of alcohol. And if it were not for the faith, that definitely wouldn't be the case. Sure.
You have a brief explanation of what the Baha'i faith is.
So the Baha'i faith is the most recent of the world religions. Essentially, we believe that God is an unknowable essence. Like he's not some guy in the sky with a beard. He is exalted. It is exalted beyond human comprehension. We're finite beings. So we cannot ever comprehend the infinite. We could never comprehend something that is like big enough to create the universe because we don't even know how big the universe is. Yeah. And this basically, the Baha'i faith just tells us that we're all one. Like the foundation of every religion in the history of the world is love. And from the beginning of time, God has sent different teachers to help us, like nudge us along as we keep forgetting our purpose to get us to a place of unity and to finally get us to love each other. And that's really all the faith is. It's all about service to mankind and love. It's the root of why I do everything that I do. And I think the reason I've been so comfortable talking about it is because I've realized that if it were not for that faith that grounds me, I would be such a mess and none of this would exist. None of this would exist. My exploration of what happens when we die, the masculinity and like the true equality of women and men, like my work and why I'm trying to be of service, like it's been the thing that has grounded me when nothing else can. Because look, dude, I got a big ego. I like just like everybody else. Like I'm very animalistic in nature. I'm trying my best to like be quick to listen and slow to anger, but my past has always been like quick to anger and then apologizing after I say something that I shouldn't have said. And like even something as simple as Abdul Baha saying, use words as mild as milk. That to me, that little tiny thing goes, oh, okay, I can get that. And you grasp that, to see no man as friends, or to see no men as strangers, but to see all men as friends. Like these like little things, it's like a toolkit for me. Yeah. And it's why I think I've even had any success. So for me to not talk about it would be like to not talk about my wife.
Totally.
But that said, I'm not a musician.
It's
a little bit different for me.
It's not that different. It's really like, I think we just live in a time where everybody's just nervous to have these conversations.
It's scary.
So I made this whole fucking podcast to like force myself and people that I love and that I'm so interested in to be like, okay, there's a lot of really interesting things about being alive that none of us talk about. Yeah. Why not?
But so you're doing the exact same thing, which I was talking about earlier, which is you're creating something so that you can become better.
Yeah.
So that you can like dive in and become better.
Totally.
And yeah, I think that's what it's all about. It's also a really scary time in general to talk about anything.
Yeah.
Like, if you can think about it, it's like a scary time to have an opinion about anything.
Anything.
Because there is somebody somewhere with keyboard courage that's going to tell you you're an idiot.
Yeah.
It's just
True.
it's just the world that we're living in. And I think that it's important to be brave and to have an opinion and to talk about things, but to do it in a way that is unifying. And to shut your mouth when it's not. Like, it's like it doesn't, you know, there's no reason. I don't need to say something for the sake of saying it. If there's an issue that needs to be said, then of course I need to say it. Or if there's some burning thing in my, but I don't want to ever just talk for the sake of talking, or to express something for the sake of expressing something. There's so many amazing, eloquent people out there that can do that. I don't need to. For me, the faith is, I'm just grateful for it. You know, it's saved my life in so many different ways. And so that's why I talk about it.
Awesome, man. Okay. Let's hit you with some of these questions that I hit everybody with that are my favorite. What is the most spiritual experience you've ever had? Let's get weird.
I think there's a couple of them. I think one of them was watching my daughter be born. That was probably it. And what was so interesting is another one was definitely watching somebody pass.
Mm.
And I've realized they're the same thing. Because when my daughter was born and she came through and I was the first person to hold her and pray for her and touch her, I realized in that moment that that was not the last time I was going to do that. And that was the most spiritual experience, I think, of my life. Because one day, when I'm gone and she's coming through wherever she's going, I'm going to be right there doing the exact same thing.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good one. Yeah, that's really good.
Everyone got really quiet.
I know, it's good. Money. Tell me what's awesome about money and what's the worst about money.
What's awesome about money is that it allows you to, if you use it correctly, it allows you to impact a lot of people. It allows you to affect and make a difference in a bigger way. It allows you to amplify anything good that you were trying to do before you had money. And it gives you resources to truly make a difference. It makes things slightly easier, and at the same time, it makes things much harder.
So what's bad about it?
What's bad about it is that I think it is one of the greatest tests that we could ever have in life, because it's meaningless, but yet it's everything at the same time. It's a necessary thing, but yet it's absolutely meaningless. And all you have to do is look through history to see that every single king and ruler and sultan, every billionaire, they wind up being buried right next to somebody that had nothing. And we spend our lives accumulating and trying so hard to make money, and we can't take it with us. Even though some Egyptian, pharaohs have been buried with their treasures. Can't use it wherever we're going, even if it's my version or the black version, right? And I think that it is the thing that can lead literally to the downfall of civilization. It can lead to, like, materialism itself is the opposite of spirituality. And I think that in our lives, we're here to figure out how we can go from our lower nature to our higher nature. And money inherently, like, there's something about it that just drops into your lower nature. This feeling of, oh, I need it, or what if it goes away, or am I going to be okay without it, or all of these things are not real. It's the vain imaginings. It's what I talked about, like the mirage. It's literally a mirage, and all it does is it just amplifies what's already there. So, like, if you're a selfless person without money, God willing, you'll be a selfless person with money. But yeah, it's a big test.
Yeah. What's the biggest myth that you've had to overcome about yourself? That you like a core belief about yourself that you've been able to shift? He asked for these. He was texting me. He's like, "Yo, send me the questions before."
Yeah, I was like, send me something. I was like, send me. What are you gonna ask me, dude? Mm-hmm. The biggest myth I've had to overcome about myself, probably that I'm worthy of being loved for who I am. I think I spent so long growing up in these places just feeling like I had to change, like that I wasn't okay as me. And I just didn't know if I'd ever really find somebody that loved me for just like the mess that I am. Like, and then I found my wife who does.
Yeah.
And I think that like I'm still trying to figure out how that's even happened and how that's possible. And like even today we were driving over here, I was like, baby, thank you for coming to this, like, and for actually wanting to be here, because we live together and we're married, and I'm just gonna go talk for an hour, and I don't know. I just I think like being worthy of like being truly loved and like having like the shitty parts of myself loved. That's awesome.
Yeah. This can be anything. Give me one thing you love and one thing you hate. It can be like deep or silly or whatever you want. One thing you love, like you love, and one thing you hate.
There's so many things that I love. This is a random thing that just popped in my head. I love moments when two people are in a conversation or something happens and a truth bomb is dropped and then the hairs stick up on my arms. Like I love moments where you're going deep enough that your body reacts to like whatever it is that you're talking about, and your eyes start to water, and you're like, yeah, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be right now. That's truth. I love those kind of moments as it happens to me right
sick.
now. And one thing I hate?
Yeah.
I hate when people get so mad when they're driving. Because I don't like, I hate when I'm trying, trying to like get into the like a lane, and someone sees me and they just don't let me in.
Yeah.
And then I look over and I'm like, and they know that I'm looking at them, and they just on purpose pretend like I'm not and then they just drive by.
Yeah.
And then there's that really awkward moment when you pull up to them because you're eventually gonna meet them anyways. And then I'm the kind of person that like likes to look over. You know, like I just don't get it. Like, why spread that? Like, why? I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate road rage.
Yeah.
Because it's not that big of a deal.
It's not a big deal.
It's not that big of a deal.
I think I've even said on this podcast, right? My biggest hate is when, because I'm at a lot of mini marts touring, is when I look them in the eye and I'm like, can I use your bathroom? They're like, we don't have one. I'm like, you definitely have one. This is so messed up. And it happens to me a lot, so I hate that. Okay. Finally, why are we here?
Why are we here?
Yeah.
We are here to, generation by generation, improve on ourselves and each other to create like an ever-advancing civilization that can one day live in peace. And so that our kids or our great-grandkids or our great-grandkids can live in a world where they don't have to worry about food insecurity or plastic filling up the ocean or politics and hate and, you know, people being killed just because of their skin color, or there isn't a part of the world where people have less and that there are famines, so that we can one day pass down a civilization that takes care of each other. And I think that the only way that can happen is if those of us that are alive right now wake up and realize that like our purpose here is to love, and our purpose here is to like raise kids that see unity and that despite their differences love each other. And that's a pretty big task.
Yeah.
But like what more fruitful thing to leave behind than like a generation that understands that peace is the goal.
Yeah. Good dude, right?
I love you so much, man.
I
This
love
is so
you.
cool
Thank
that
you
we
for
get to have a
coming on this.
conversation like this.
Such a great time. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, guys.
So yeah, we do. If anybody has any questions, please, we're gonna set this up right here, and you can, I guess, because I don't know. Yeah, you can just come up and ask it. And if you do, we have these sweet ass mugs So for every person that asks a question, you will get a Good Parts Podcast mug.
Can I take one home too?
Yeah, you get one too. Does anybody have a question? Please come on up. Yeah.
Sean Hill.
Easily. I love you guys.
What up?
So, you know what? I actually been wanting to ask you both for a while this. I've known you guys for years. The thing is, you both don't like compliments, right? Is there anything, like, you both get, like, so weird when someone compliments you, or, like, the worthiness, right? You talked about earlier, that was beautiful. So is there anything that you would recommend to people on how to accept those things better? Or any things that have worked for you that kind of you let it resonate more? Or those moments you're like, you know what? I'm going to do my best to receive that. I'm so curious. Love you guys.
You want to go? This just happened on tour. I encourage everyone to do this. Before every show, I have a backup singer whose father was a preacher. And usually he huddles us up and gives us this awesome like pep talk of getting ready to go do a show. And this tour specifically, he made each one of us sit in a chair, and then the other 6 band members would do what you're talking about. They would say, they'd look you in the eye, and they'd be like, these are the things that I see about you, that I love about you, that I really appreciate about you. And it was so hard to sit there. Like, again, my mind is like, there shouldn't be nothing wrong with this. Why can't I accept love? Like, am I that messed up that I can't just, basically someone's going like, I love you, and I'm going like, no! But I don't have any advice of how to do it. All I know is that it is worth the battle to fight through it. Because what's so sweet about it is the next day, then someone else is in the chair, and the only thing I want to do is tell them how sweet they are and how much I love them, and tell them how I appreciate them and all they do for me, and make sure that they understand that they're seen and they're heard. So I got nothing as far as like how to do it, but you must force yourself to do it. What do you got?
I think, yeah, I've always been really bad at accepting compliments, but really good at giving them.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's Sean Hill, who's an amazing spoken word
Yeah,
artist.
he's great. He's the best. Check him out.
So, I don't know.
Can you get that man a muggy, man?
Yeah, get
him a mug. Okay, you got it right. Okay, we're good.
I think that it's important that we figure out how to accept compliments, but I think it's almost more important that we just make sure that we also give them. I don't know if as human beings we'll ever get to a place where we just believe everything good about ourselves, and I don't necessarily even know if that's a good thing. I can tell you right now, like having Instagram and having my DMs like possibly open, if I believed the thousands of positive things people said about me, you couldn't fit my head in this room.
Yeah.
Like you just couldn't. And so I think there's a beautiful thing about also just saying thank you, but I don't know if that's true. That might be your perception. Now, it's also not good when you don't believe anything good about yourself, but yeah. I think that there's a balance. I think that
Do we think this is a man-girl thing or no? Man-woman thing?
I think it's a human thing.
It's a human thing.
I think it's a human thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I know anybody that believes every good
it's
thing
really
about
hard
themselves.
To take no matter who you are.
And we're all just trying to figure it out. But I do wish I was a little bit better at just taking it in for like more than 5 seconds. Because it just goes in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
And then, but if you pin me down and you say those things, I'm just like, okay. But we do that too. We do that every year for like birthdays and things. Like for my wife's last birthday and our friends last. Like we just have everybody surround and like say all the things about that person.
I dare you all to do that. It's amazing.
Do it with somebody.
Does anybody else have a question?
Or just text somebody that you love.
Oh, we got one. She's right here.
Hi.
Hello. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
So I actually work in politics, and we're a generally progressive organization. So we are about kind of like spreading love and equality and making sure that people have the rights that they deserve. But like you were saying, there is just so much hate in the world sometimes. So how do you recommend bridging that divide? How do you show people that we are all the same? And like you said, the color of your skin doesn't matter, and that whether you're from one part of the world or another, that we all deserve health care and to be healthy and happy and have a family who loves us.
Mm.
I unfortunately don't think it could ever be solved by politics, because politics are by nature divisive, even though they're supposed to be unifying. And if you look at our current political system, and even if you look at the last election, it's just so clear that we're moving farther apart. Until we can start to see each other as friends and as humans and as brothers and sisters, until we can start to see a mother who can't afford to take care of her children, and instead of just watching that on the news, call and do something about it until we can actually like feel empathy, right? Then we could have all the, you know, female presidents and black presidents and all, you know, Latina presidents and everything that we want. You're always going to have people on opposite sides that like ideologically don't agree with each other. And the only way that divide can ever like continue to be shortened is if people listen to each other. And no one's listening. It's impossible, right, to both speak and listen at the same time. That's an Abdu'l-Baha quote. Mm-hmm. And everybody's just speaking. And everyone's waiting for their chance to speak while the other person's speaking. And so nobody's listening. And until like you can get two people together and realize that like, you know, wait, we're the same? Whether someone has money or doesn't. And that's another thing about money is so directly related to politics right now. Like I think half of it is just about money. Like, because we're all attached to it or we're not attached to it. Or it's just like, there's plenty of money to go around if we just all wake up and realize that we're brothers and sisters and we're humans. And so that's my big thing is like listening. You know, that's why I don't ever talk about politics. I don't come out with a political viewpoint. I don't come out and talk about endorsing parties. I don't do any of that because I think at its core, no matter how progressive somebody is or how much I agree, there's going to be a whole group of people that don't. And I always want to be able to talk to both sides because the things that we're talking about right now are not political. They're human. They're just human. Feminism, masculinity, all these things are not political. They're human. We all need to like be open. And I don't know. So I think it comes down to like creating songs like Andy creates, the good, you know, like the good parts, or shows like I'm working on, or, you know, television and film, like trying to find ways to like bridge the gap and show that we're all the same. Those types of things are super helpful.
I salute anyone in any field that is attempting to bring light. So whatever that means to you, like keep pushing in any area. I think that the quote that's coming to my head is the essence of faith is fewness of words and abundance of deeds. So I think it's just a lot about just like in your sphere of influence, how can you bring as much light as you possibly can?
And there's one more tiny thing. It's also necessary, right? And like politics are necessary. Like Emily and I on the way here were talking about how, God, like what about all the moms that don't have any help? Like she was just talking about all the moms in the world that like have no help. Here we are, we have some money and we have a nanny, but what about all the moms that don't? Like all the people that don't have health care or child care. And in Sweden, as an example, where she's from, there's all these, like they pay for you to have daycare, all these things. There's politics there, unfortunately. So it's a necessary evil. So, but at the same time, we have to figure out like how to make that not like just a party, right? It's got to be universal. Like we all have to realize like, you know, doesn't matter what our core beliefs are, like we can sit here and realize that we're both human.
Awesome. Great question. Thank you so much. We got a couple more. Yeah, what do you got? He's on it with the mugs. You got the mug.
Thank you both so much. This conversation I feel fed today, so thank you.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm a mom. I have 2 little boys, and through both of your work, it comes across so clear that your hearts are just so strong and open. And so I'm wondering, as you think back your own mothers, specifically, is there anything that sticks out to you that they did that helped nourish that in you?
There you go.
I would love to hear that.
Oh yeah, Andy's mom.
Go ahead.
No.
Go for it. You take first.
Man, no, this is all you.
Your question is like, what did my mom do? She's
wrote most of his albums.
Yeah. My mother, she was like really into. It's funny because I was with my daughter this morning, right? She wakes up mad early. So I was with her from like 6 to 9 a.m. And I was thinking, we put on like some stupid kids show. And we're watching it and I'm going like, this isn't the best use of my time with you. Turned it off. And I just started thinking like, oh, okay, it's my job to like help pull out the weeds of you and make sure that you are someone that's fantastic. And my mom was just really good at fostering this side of myself. I remember hearing her, like, she would always make sure that I was going to some spiritual retreat or that there was just a lot of thought and planning going into how my heart was at all times, right? And I know how lucky that is. A lot of times that's not the case. And I always think with my career, with anything that I've ever done, my mom built this like invisible city where other people will like do things physically. They'll put brick by brick and make something that everyone else can see, which is like a huge building, some sort of architecture. My mom spent tireless hours making me, you know. So.
And she did an amazing job, man.
Oh, thank you. So wherever she is in the next place, and I carry myself knowing like, oh my God, I'm her building. I better like show up, you know. What do you got? You got a pretty cool
Mom
mom.
was amazing, dude. And the thing about your mom is that it's so clear she's still building that city, like with you. Like, you can just see it, like, and like clearing out like other crappy houses around you, like before you. You're building your invisible city, and she's just like, no, that one's ugly. I don't want that one there. Like, get that one. You got to protect my son. I just know she's doing that.
Yeah.
She helped me in my TED Talk too. I straight up talked to your mom before my TED
All
Talk.
the time.
I was like, oh my God, please, Kathy. My mom's like a spiritual warrior as well. I'll never, like, my childhood can be best described. My mom would tell me, this is straight up. She would say, okay, Justin, all your friends, they're on like 8-lane highways. Like, they can just like go from one lane to the other and like, yeah, it's all good. Like, they'll be fine. They can like break the rules, or they can do drugs or whatever they want, and there's like no consequences. And it's great. Their lives are great. But you, my son, you're on a 2-lane highway, and there's traffic coming in the other direction. And when you decide to go off, you can if you want, but you have more responsibility because you know your purpose. You know why you're here. So you can go off, but you know there's other cars coming, and you might crash. But just know when you crash, that's a learning experience for you to get you back on your path, which you know, right? And I was like, why the hell would you tell me this as like a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old? And like every time in my life when all my friends were out drinking or partying or toilet papering people's houses, if I ever tried to do anything, I would get caught. Like the first day I got my driver's license, like just speeding and like going crazy, like there was an undercover cop behind me the entire time. Like, it's just been my entire life. Every time I've just wanted to be like the other kids, there was just like a spiritual thing that always like kept me on path. And I'm so grateful, although I was resentful for many years for that, because then I was like, no, Mom, now I'm creating that for myself, you know? Yeah. She always was just there to remind me of my potential as a spiritual human being, which is something that is so rare today. Like, not about like my potential to be a great artist or a soccer player, all the things that I was like materially interested in. She was there to remind me of like my spiritual capacity. Mm-hmm. And our moms were very similar in that way, in that invisible city. And I'm super grateful for that, because that's still in the back of my head. It's still there in everything that I do. And if it were not for my mom, who was my first educator, who taught me my faith, there's no chance I'd be sitting here with you, man.
Mm. Great question. Got through it. Woo! Yes.
Hi, sweetheart. Hi.
Okay, hi guys.
Hey.
It is very clear that you guys are both powerhouse givers. That's a big part of who you are, is giving, giving, giving. And I just want to challenge you just a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Brene Brown, who I'm a big fan of.
Brene Brown.
She's great.
Says,
She's
right? We all love
amazing.
Brene.
Love
We
her.
all love Brene. Says, now I'm going to blow it. I've been practicing it over there.
It's okay.
Until we can receive with an open heart, we're never truly giving with an open heart. When we attach judgment to receiving help, we knowingly or unknowingly attach judgment to giving help. So I want to challenge you guys to, first of all, do you believe that? And second of all, can you give an example of a time that you had to get out of yourself and your pride, especially where you're in a position where you can be givers all the time, and accept help even though it challenged you? What do you think of the time?
Well, yeah. So first, I mean, I think I talked about just with Andy, there were 2 times already, I think, on this podcast I've talked about accepting the help. When I accepted when I when I cashed that $500 check that he gave me, when I had nothing, that was a big moment, because I was like, because I remember there was a time when even in my early 20s, when I had experienced success, that I could have helped everybody, and I did. That's probably why my money went so fast. But accepting that help was huge. And then again, the second time when I called him, and I'll never forget, like when this girl had broken up with me, and which is kind of ridiculous now. Like it was just, he came over, and I remember he was crying because he just knew how heartbroken I was. And then it was like, come sleep on my couch. And just being in that position and being so vulnerable, knowing you have nowhere to live, and you don't even have the money to have a down payment on an apartment. So like I was legit homeless. Save it for my friend Andy Grammer, who also wasn't it was a pretty crappy apartment. Let's be real. Like that was back when Andy was microwaving tuna fish.
Yeah.
Which Asia, he doesn't do that anymore, does he?
We've moved on.
Does he? Okay. Okay. Yeah. But there's been so many times actually that I've accepted help when I've needed it, and I think that's another journey in masculinity, is men being okay with accepting help. But I will say, like Brene Brown's incredible. I just don't know any person that I've never met that is always giving with a pure heart or accepting with a pure heart. I just don't know if it's physically human. Like, that's a beautiful quote, and she's amazing. I think it's an amazing thing to aspire to. I just don't know any human being that's currently that I've met that is just that is ever 100% pure in anything. And that's one of the beautiful things about being human. I think aspirationally, absolutely, we should always attempt to be pure. But I can tell you right now that there's a lot of times when I give, or I think I'm being pure, and then I think about it and I talk myself out of it, and I go, oh my God, that was so selfish. I'm an awful person. Like, I just helped that person for me. I should stop doing it altogether. And then that's just a dangerous place. Like the second we start questioning our purity, which I do believe we should do, it's like a dangerous road, because you realize you're never just completely pure. Giving feels good for a reason. God designed it like that way. For philanthropy feels amazing for a reason, right? It's a reward that he built in to a human, so that we could just remind ourselves oh, wait, this feels good, I should do it more. I don't know anybody that's giving, whether it's helping somebody over the holidays or showing up to feed the homeless on Skid Row or just helping a friend in need, that doesn't feel more fulfilled than the person that they just gave to, but then quickly forgets, right? And Ahmed here, one of my business partners, Muslim, he's the first person to tell me that the Arabic word for human, insan, literally means they who forget. And that's our job here. We forget our human nature all the freaking time. So tying all that back, I don't know anybody that does it perfectly. I love that quote. I love Brene Brown. I think she's incredible. She talks about vulnerability. I just don't know if I'm ever going to get there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the quote. I think it's great. And I'm trying to think of probably an area where I've had to really learn how to take support or take it in is, I think probably my wife has been able to be so giving to me. And that's a relationship where you have to figure it out. Mm-hmm. You have to learn how to take it. And so he
is really a giver, though.
I know what you mean, though. It feels more comfortable giving. We were talking about this all the whole time. It's just more comfortable, and you feel better. There's something about receiving that either it's in our culture or whatever that perceives it as less. I know once I've had a little bit of money, you start doing this thing where you think that you should just treat everybody all the time to food. And you slowly realize that sometimes that's cool, but a lot of times you're kind of being a dick. Because there's a certain, once it's not about the money, it's about it can turn into power, and that sometimes giving is not giving. So you have to be really careful, and that sometimes to just accept someone else paying for the check, something as small as that, is actually a sweet thing and important. I don't know if that was as profound as I was hoping it would be, but
super profound.
But I appreciate that. That's great. Let's do 2 more questions. Yes.
You always try to buy dinner with me.
What?
We always fight over it.
It's a sweet thing, and then the dinner thing is starts sweet. You're like, oh my God, let me pay for it. And then it like slowly turns into like ego.
Although I will never forget it's when he first like kind of hit it big. He took me and one of our other best friends, Adam, who was a roommate, and he took us to like lobsters and steak, and we absolutely let him.
That
pay.
was good. That was fine. That was fine. Yes. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
You actually just touched on a little bit of what I wanted to ask you just now when you said ego. I wanted to ask you if you have any tools that you use to connect to your intuition so you can distinguish when you're doing the right thing that's really the best for you and the best for maybe the greater good, or versus like when you're doing something out of ego and fear or greed.
That's such a good question.
Really good.
That is such a good question.
You got it?
No, you go.
Okay, there's a really cool Baha'i quote that is like when you say tool, I think of it like a tool. Because I think right now, with so much of our lives on social media, so much is in comparison. We're like living in a state of comparison that you never get to turn off. Like it's right when you wake up, there's like you're constantly comparing. There's a really cool Baha'i quote that says, I'm gonna butcher it. It says, "Know thou with certainty, the heart wherein the least remnant of envy yet lingers will never attain my everlasting dominion." And that basically is like remnant. It's like you've already tried to scoop it all out, and there's like a little bit left over. Even if that's there, then you're not on your path. And from a very young age, when I heard that, it's been like a fail-safe for me that I try to use consistently. Once I start comparing myself to somebody else, that comes up, and it's like, that's not right. That's not in my purpose. That's not the way I'm supposed to be. Yeah. That has actually been very helpful. For other people, it's not that helpful. But for me, that quote specifically is like, cool. I go back to that a lot, even throughout the day, when I find that I'm like starting to lose. I think there's this idea that a gun went off at the exact same time for all of us when we started running a race, when it's like the most ridiculous idea ever. So to me, my answer to that is just like, comparison is the thief of joy. And anytime you find yourself doing that, try to create a fail-safe switch in you that goes like, oh, I'm doing that thing, or like compare myself to everybody else. Stop, you know?
Comparison is the thief of joy is like the perfect quote there.
Yeah.
And then in terms of intuition and ego, I can tell you that that's like one of the great questions in life. I don't know if that's something that any of us will ever get to truly answer. I mean, look, I'm sure there's a bunch of people on social media right now that have that answer. Like all the gurus and that just can tell you, you know, all the different things about yourself that you can fix if you just were to do this. I don't know if we'll ever quite figure it out. I think that that's kind of one of the journeys of life is, can you start to learn the difference between a decision made of love and a decision made out of fear? And, you know, Baha'u'llah calls the ego the evil whispering one. It's really quiet, and it's just whispering in your ear all the time, and it's like getting you to second guess things. And if you don't listen closely, you can't tell the difference between that and your intuition. So you don't know. And that's a really, if you think about it, like just if you were to design life like a video game, right? Like what a crazy obstacle to not know if the information you're getting comes from like your purity and your intuition or if it comes from your ego. And for me, that's where prayer comes in, which I think of it like a protection. Even in a little moment, like a little tiny prayer, like, oh, what am I doing? Which way should I go? Is this right? Is this not right? What I've also found is that if I think it's intuition, but it's really ego or fear, it's very quickly shown to me which one it is. That wall shows up out of nowhere and you hit it at 100 miles an hour and you're like, oh, and then you learn. And that's like the beautiful thing about life. And I've experienced that, back to the other quote, I've experienced that in service. Like, why am I doing this right now? Am I doing this for me, or is it or why am I giving? Am I taking care of myself? Like, and it's in every decision we make. In marriage, like so much of marriage is about quieting the ego and quieting like the whispering one and like showing up and being open and trusting intuition and being there. And that's just like the beautiful thing about life. And if anybody's got it figured out, like, God, that's amazing. but I think that's a muscle I can see us working on our entire lives.
Yeah. Any other question? Yes.
So I ironically moved to Los Angeles about a year ago. So it's the most superficial city in the U.S., right?
Sure.
And I moved here for graduate school for psychology. So I moved to the superficial city to learn how to have deep personal conversations with people. You two seem like really deep personal people, right? Justin, you said how much
all
you
not
hate
real.
small talk. How do you deal with it here? Like, and this goes for anyone. How do you... For those listening to this podcast, they probably really appreciate deep conversations. How do you deal with the superficial of LA, of everyday life?
It's a great question, honestly. I think that everyone has, this is like kind of a weird answer, but like everybody's got a grandma. Like everybody has something sweet to talk about that will go deeper. And in the conversation, you can always chase it there, you know? Even at like some backstage of like an award show or a party where everybody's like all glammed up, I find that that everyone's receptive when you do take the conversation somewhere else, you know? Like one of the things that I've been asking every woman that I meet, whether they're fans or just someone in an elevator, or if I'm with someone for a long period of time, I go like, could you tell me about your dad? I just had a daughter and I want to know how to be a better dad. Can you tell me some things that like your dad did that were good? Every woman goes like, either they right away they're like, my dad sucks, or like, my dad was awesome. These are the reasons why. And now we're like tight. Now we're like closer. I think it's a lot on a city of people is not bad. They're just people. Yeah.
First of all, I love that you talk to people in elevators because I always try to do that,
Yeah.
and it's so awkward.
Yeah.
I challenge everybody in this room or everyone listening to try to talk to someone
Yeah.
in an elevator. Like, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
It's just that awkward thing, and it's even. I just can't even believe you ask women in elevators about their dad. I think that's so cool. It's one of the things I love the most. Andy Grammer's always been somebody who's just constantly searching for truth, and in all the strangest places. I love it. It's just the coolest. I think that I love LA, and I love superficial places because, again, none of it's real. So I personally take a lot of satisfaction of trying to help people remember why they're even here in the first place or why they moved. And I think that you have an opportunity in a superficial place to like bring so much depth and help people remember. And like, what greater gift than like helping people remember? That's why he does what he does. That's
Also,
why
you're
I do what I do.
you're sitting in LA having a very deep day.
It's true, and that's the one.
Like you're
that's one of the
surrounded
cool
by a
things.
lot of people here that are into it. So
and one of, like and yes, it's superficial, but I think like there's also so many amazing people here. Like the shininess of LA brings artists, and I don't know. Poets. We're all like bleeding hearts that come here, and then we get lost chasing this like the money and the superficiality and the fame and all these things. But at our core, we're all kids with a dream.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I love about LA is like, you know, if you just go like a little bit deeper, you find like that we're all the same.
Also, I'll say one thing, which is maybe a good place to end, is if you are brave enough to vocalize that you would like to have deeper conversations, I think you'll find that a lot of people will show up.
Yeah.
At our house, when we were roommates, he started something called the Spiritual Talk. And it was basically kind of like this, and just like come hang out, we'll read quotes from different religions, and we'll pray together, and we'll go into these topics that don't get brought up enough. And so many people came. It was
Everybody
amazing.
came.
We did it every Sunday or something?
Every Sunday for years. And at one point there was like 120 people in our living room every Sunday. And you just saw that everybody's craving the same thing. And if you can look, like now that you just moved here, if you can look at the city or any city, wherever you are listening to this, any city you go to in the world, any group of people you go to, it doesn't matter. We're all the same. We all have hopes and dreams and parents and grandmas and wants and needs, and none of us feel like we're enough, and we all feel like we suck, and like no one thinks they really look that good when they look in the mirror, and we're all just trying to figure this out, and we're all like learning how to be the best people we can be. And then there's nothing intimidating about it. Whether you meet a celebrity or a person on the street, it's all the same.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming. I had a great time. I hope you had a good time.
Thank you for having me, man.
Thank you so much to Justin. I want to leave you with... I don't know why I was thinking this came out when I was thinking of what I was going to speak with you about. This is my quote for you from me. You are a tornado of soul and inspiration that no one on this planet is safe from. That's what you are to me. You're like a spinning ball of soul that like will cross everyone's path. So thank you for being here, and thank you to everybody for coming. We'll see you next time.
I love you
Peace
so
out.
much.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome.